Hey everybody, welcome back. I want to apologize. I I sat down to do a video the other night, and as advertised, I'm going to be drawing Judge Dredd. And if you don't know who Judge Dredd is, I'll go into all that. But I had the worst couple of days trying to get recover my video. But I drew this. I drew from this was a 2 hour long video from beginning to end, where I drew it and then I inked it. Judge Dredd, I am the law. Okay, and it was great. But you want to know what I did wrong? Because I'm new to YouTube, but I want to share this with you. I want to let you guys know, okay? Because maybe this will help me from ever doing this kind of thing again. Is I got everything set up. I got my lighting all great. Everything was working fine. But I set my camera up to go portrait instead of landscape. And when you go that way, when I went to upload it, it tilts it. So the whole video would have been sideways. Oh my gosh. And I'm not experienced enough to know how to turn it and make it fit and all this jazz. And so anyway, I've been trying to recover this and turn it into a bunch of shorts, because I still have the content, but that didn't work either. So I'm learning, But anyway, so this, I'm pretty proud of how he turned out. And I love doing color, but I don't know why Judge Dredd. I just felt like doing it. Now, if he looks familiar to you, again, Judge Dredd came out of the 80s, out of England. And he was a very enigmatic character. And I specify that he came out of England because it was very, there's a lot of interesting stuff that came out of the writers that grew up in Great Britain. And, so their writing is kind of dark, on the dark side. I think that we can blame them for the success of DC Comics, because when I was a comic collector, when I was a kid, none of my friends, and I say this gently, okay, because I really love the Dark Knight, and I really like Batman. I always have, but I never collected Batman, because the representation that we had of Batman was Adam West, who portrayed him really like a goofball. And if you're a teenage boy, I'm like, that's not cool. I want somebody who's gonna kick ass and take names, right? So I think that affected the decision making there. Okay, if you're wondering, this is his helmet. Now, the art I went with before, it was I can't remember the artist's name, but this one's definitely more Brian Bolland inspired. In fact, this what I'm gonna do here is kind of a I don't know what you would call it. It's inspired by, it's kind of like without using the word knockoff, I'm just going to use it. It's like a knockoff of his work. Okay. Put his gun up here. Okay. So anyway, as you can see, I'm just roughing it in real light, because I'm gonna change this up. Okay. Here we got his huge shoulder pad. That is his helmet. This is his arm with his gloves. So anyway, the other one was a lot simpler. This one's a little bit more dynamic. So again, I'm just kind of raw. But anyway, I got exposed to Judge Dredd by a friend of mine. And again, I had some fantastic friends. Like, for that brief period of time, whether it be role-playing games, in the 80s, fell in love with D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. It was amazing. That was my anti-drug. Seriously, I grew up in a really clean part of the United States. We weren't into drugs or anything. Nobody. If you were and you experimented, God bless you. I never did, because I had role-playing games, collaborative storytelling, like I've said before. That was my drug. And man, was it awesome. Well, anyway, we collected comics. We were nerds. We went the whole 9 yards. Um, and I had a friend who was really into being different, like meanwhile, my buddies and I were all collecting different Marvel titles. And he's getting these comics from England, across the pond, just kind of weird, weird titles like, hey, what's this all about, and they turned out to be pretty cool, and Judge Dredd was one of them, where it was just kind of like, oh man, this guy, who the heck is this guy? He's like, you know, judge, jury, and executioner all wrapped up into one. They're violent comics. He doesn't mess around like the movies. If you watch the movies, don't watch the Sylvester Stallone one. I am the law. He's terrible. He's just awful. That was a terrible adaptation. If you want to watch a better movie, in my opinion, that's closer to the original comic, look for the one that Carl Urban is in, and it's awesome. I've watched it multiple times. I really enjoyed it, just because part of the reason that movie worked is he never took his helmet off, because in the comics you never see his face. You never see his face. You see like the lower half of his pissed off face, and that's about it, right? you never see what he really looks like. You see the lower half, he's a white dude, angry white guy. But you never see his face, and that's part of what made Boba Fett cool and the Mandalorian cool, until they started taking their helmets off. And I think that's what kind of ruined the Boba Fett series. It had a lot of problems, but that was one of the things, the main complaint that I hear from a lot of people. Well, anyway, I'm reading Judge Dredd. My friend has him. His armor's all kind of articulated, and he's going to be a little bit different than the other one I drew. Like, this one's a little bit more, again, it's a lot more rounded off, and I particularly like my eagles, the way I did them, just kind of whatever. Use some work on his little badge there, but but this stuff, it's kind of, America, it's kind of over the top, not like Homelander over the top, if anybody caught that reference from The Boys, Homelanders. Yikes. That comic is twisted. Anyway, all I know it is from the show, and the show is pretty twisted in and of itself. Just kind of the dark side of comics. People might want to say, oh, it's realism or whatever, but I'm just kind of like, I don't know. So, but I still watch it. Anyway, so that's going to be an eagle perching over there, and then he's got his other shoulder pauldron type thingy, I guess. I'm not even sure of I don't know how long this is going to take, guys, so you're in for the long haul. But anyway, my friends, I've kindly called them in the years past, looking back, I've called us the escapists, because we were super into reading, and we had an upperclassman that, he got us turned on to, stuff like, hey, yeah, because we all knew about The Hobbit, because there was the cartoons. But there was a Lord of the Rings cartoon that we had seen, that Ralph Bakshi had been part of, that he had done, but it was kind of terrible. I mean, it was cool, but it wasn't that great, because they employed a technique called rotoscoping. And rotoscoping is where you film a bunch of people dressed up. Like, for instance, if you know what I'm talking about, the old cartoon, the old Lord of the Rings cartoon, there's the parts with the orcs, and the orcs are all like heavily shadowed and weird, and they look oddly real. Well, it's because it's a bunch of people kind of dressed up, and then the animators take the actual film cells themselves, I guess, and they paint over them. And anyway, but I think Ralph, another example of that is there was a movie called Fire and Ice. It was a cartoon. Again, sword and sorcery is pretty kick butt, man. It's pretty awesome. But it was like typical, sword and sorcery and books and babes and that sort of thing. But it was really kind of cool in its own way. Very Conan-esque, you know. So coming together, see his arms kind of blocking his face, but his eyes are up here. And again, you don't see his eyes, but there's like these little lightning bolts kind of in the reflection. Now the cool thing, as you watch me draw, you're gonna see me kind of change it up a little bit. Like there's certain volumes, certain shapes of stuff that doesn't quite work out. And as I'm drawing, I'll go, hey, this isn't working out, and I'll change it up, because you, as the artist, this is your domain. You are in control. I say this all the time, but you really are. You're in absolute control. So if you're gonna make the decision to change something, just do it. Like, I don't have to draw him exactly like Brian Bolland's, and I won't. I'll change it up a little, because I'm not a copyist. I'm not gonna copy this dude's art. It's just more or less an inspiration. I have mad respect for the guys that just do create stuff on the fly. I have, when I get really good, like if I know a character really well, I'll do that. But yeah, anyway, see where I'm going with this. So he never takes off his mask. There was a cool series where, again, alternate realities come into play. And I'm not going to ruin anything, but the scientists of Mega City 1 poke a hole into some alternate reality. And, the judges are the guys that bring order to Mega City 1. And again, it's the millions of people crammed, in this equivalent of like New York. The other alternative is living out in the cursed earth, which is, a nuclear wasteland where all the mutants and stuff live. But instead, if you live in the dome, if you live under, in the protected area of the world, you better obey the law, or you're gonna suffer the consequences. So anyway, again, this is a shoulder pad. They're different. Helmet, elbow. That's his badge, the lower part of it. Okay. So, and here we're gonna have the other, like his belt buckle. It's gonna be different. It's not gonna look like the eagle. I might change it though. And he's got like a little utility belt thing here. So these little, look like they can hold little granola bars in there. No, it's for ammo, of course. Come on, you guys. Don't let me fool you. So again, he doesn't skip leg day. He's got some intense legs here. So, but my friends, we all read a lot of books really early. I'm talking like junior high. We were cracking into Lord of the Rings, Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft. My favorite H.P. Lovecraft story is At the Mountains of Madness, which I keep hearing rumors that they're going to make a film, and if they do, oh boy, I hope they do a good job, because scary, creepy cosmic horror. A lot of people give Stephen King props, like, oh yeah, how do you think of that? Well, and again, I got nothing against Mr. King. I've read a lot of his work. I've read his book on writing, and respect the man very much in terms of his talent. But he was inspired. There's nothing new under the sun, and a lot of his ideas are very, his ideas are original. I'm not trying to take anything away from Stephen King. God, what I am trying to say is I know he was inspired by Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft, who was kind of a creepy guy who lived back in the 20s. But interestingly enough, if you know a little bit about him and that time period, Pulp Fiction was really big. Not like the Quentin Tarantino movie. I'm talking the actual Pulp Fiction, where they coin it that, where it's basically the cheap, the dime store novels. But there was a bunch of publications out back then. Weird Tales and all this stuff. And there was another young writer who built a friendship, kind of a correspondence. I don't know if they ever got together, like they ever met up, but a young man named Robert E. Howard was a friend of H.P. Lovecraft. So it's pretty interesting stuff. Because if you read some of the Robert E. Howard Conan books, which, again, don't knock them. I know probably some of you ladies are out there rolling your eyes like, Conan the Barbarian? Seriously, though? Robert E. Howard was a really good writer. I mean, he had a way of just conveying stuff. Yeah, man, I can't even describe. But he was also influenced by HP because some of his cosmic horror stuff, you could tell. Because the thing that I really liked about Robert E. Howard's writing, just to shift over into Conan, maybe we'll draw Conan. That would be cool. I like Conan's writings because he took an interesting spin on magic, which is basically that humans have no business meddling in magic, because it's a corrupting type thing. Like the only in his writings, not so much the later writings, but in his writings, if you mess with magic, you're not a good person. It's like it darkens your soul. It's like an awful thing. And it's just, wow, as opposed to all sorts of other, got his little shield up there. All other things. Now this is going to be black right in here, which is cool. So I'm going to put a little poof. So I'm going to make my shade lines here, like just for myself. Like I'm going to leave that in there because that's probably going to be in shadow, and keep that in shadow up there. And again, I make these like little X's to kind of, because my light source is obviously, it's up here. We'll make a little star. Okay, so we can see that. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can. Okay, so that's our light source. So it's gonna be hitting him up here, right? So this is gonna be in shadow back here. We'll make the curvature on his helmet. Maybe carry that like right there a little bit. I love, and again, not pun not intended, for calling this shadow sketch, because I love color so much. But again, it's the, it's based on something else. So see, he's got these weird, like his hands are a little bit more complex, to compare him, with more simpler gloves. I think this would have been an earlier drawing, like early on in the series, and then later, when I've done work for people too, I don't know if you can see this, but there's the tiniest bit of red. It's almost pink. Because I've had people go, oh man, they don't like it when I erase my lines. And I so wish I could, you guys, pray that I can get this video up. Because the cool thing is there's several, I make several changes. And like the volume on this was wrong. I changed it. I drew this a little too far over here. And so I stretched it out to, it's just those little things. Anyway. I digress, but I would really love to get that video up for you guys. Okay, more shadow talk. So boom, that's going to be in shadow. This is going to be in shadow right here. Boom. You see this? When I worked in animation, it was the same thing. There was a whole department called special effects, and this is, we're talking, you know, kind of traditional animation where, you know, these guys would just draw shadows and tones. Now, a shadow, again, in animation, it's different. A shadow is like what's back here on the floor. Okay. In animation itself, this is known as a tone. This is a shadow. A shadow is like a cast shadow. A tone is like the coloration that's on the body. And it's typically not black, it's more like a brown and stuff like that. But anyway, I don't want that little puddle back there. That just looks weird. It's like, Judge Dredd, what'd you do? And of course, tone doesn't exist, but you know what I mean. Anyway, but just depending on how you like to draw and how you're gonna do this, don't be afraid to try this stuff out. There's some really great books. Like, again, I think if you guys watched an earlier video, you're gonna remember me talking about wanting to be a comic book inker. And there's times where I really kind of go back and I like toying with it, but I know that that's not where my heart is, and I'm gonna follow my heart. Okay. That's so important, you guys. If I was to work in comics, like if I was good enough to work in comics, I don't think I am. I mean, I could do my own comic, but you know what I'm saying. Like professionally, I think I would love to be a colorist. I would just love to, you know, do some of the color. I really like to draw though too, but there's so much better, I think, better artists than me. But boy, do I love color, because here's why, is because I cut corners. I draw kind of fast and loose and whatever. And guys that ink, they definitely don't cut corners. Okay. They are, you know, they see it from beginning to end, and, you know, they maintain their lines and they make it really crisp. They are responsible for taking those really great pencil drawings and turning them into something really good, really crisp for that artist, for the guy drawing it. Now here we're gonna have like feather looking things. Again, it's gonna be more abstract than the other one. We got a rim right here. Oh, you know what? I could extend that. Nah. The thing you got to watch for when you're drawing, I don't know if you guys have ever heard about this, but you don't want one line intersecting another line. Like, check this out. See how this part of his shoulder here, it kind of lines up with the gun a little bit. You see that? So if I was to extend that over, it would look kind of weird. So I want to leave I don't want to extend it over as far. I want to leave it. I mean, I could put it all the way up here. I could extend it up, you know? Screw it. I'm going to do it. Look at that. Boom. Done. Okay. Look at that. Avoiding problems. That's me. I solve problems. Like every other guy out there in the world. Give us a problem to solve, ladies. And that's what we do. We're terrible at listening. You know, like when you're venting and you just want us to listen, what we do is we go, I'm going to solve that problem. So don't get mad at us. Don't get mad at us, because it's coming from a good place. We just want to help because we love you. We don't want you to be frustrated trying to solve your problems, but oftentimes we don't listen like we should. We're not actively listening, and we should listen more. So here we go. We got his gun coming in, and one of the things I tend to do is I gotta remember, like that's the butt of his gun here, so I want to extend that finger up. And the fingers look kind of goofy right now, but everything breaks down into shapes, guys. Like his hand, again, if you want to just draw a box, and that's all I did for him, believe it or not. And I don't know if you can see it, but this was a larger square. I was like, man, that fist looks huge. So I kind of dropped it down. I kind of broke it down a little bit, you know. Yeah, and then the I am the law, that was kind of a last minute thing. I don't have space for that up here. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not. But anyway, that is looking pretty tight right there. I mean, I could stop this here. We could come in with the inking next time, which maybe I'll do that. I don't know. Maybe I'll do that. I'm gonna draw a little bit more. We'll try to get this to a half hour. How's that? And then we'll stop and we'll ink it on the next session. But anyway, thanks for letting me ramble. Thanks for listening. I do appreciate it. I want to talk to you about art goals. Like it's a good idea if you want to try your hand at drawing, use reference material. One of the things you can do is get tracing paper. That's that paper that it's like see-through. That is not what this is, but it's that, that see-through paper. It almost looks like, I guess, saran wrap in a way, and put it over something you want to draw and try to train your hand on how that feels. And I believe it, you get better at it. Once you've drawn something, like I knew I wanted to draw Judge Dredd again because I have not drawn Dredd in like years, believe it or not. Okay. So, but I just knew it because I'm already warmed up. I'm already warmed up to do it. I think that's why, when comic book artists, they work on a series for a while. Like one of my favorite artists, again, is this guy named John Byrne. And John Byrne he drew the Fantastic Four or the Avengers. And man, it's just, all of his characters just look super tight. They looked real good, and he just knew how to do them. And he made, there's little nuances and everything. One thing about his characters though is like they're all very good looking, except if they're not. Like I don't know how to explain that, but all his men are very, very dashing looking, and all his women are all pretty and whatever, and nothing wrong with that. But again, it's the comic medium, right? These are superhuman people and they're super good looking, I guess. Somebody asked me one time, and I think I'm repeating myself, but psychology student would give me a hard time. Like, well, what's the deal with comics? Kind of wanting to touch on the fact that maybe I'm immature. Sure, I'm immature, whatever. Or that I idolize these beings or whatever, and it's just stories, But I think on a deeper psychological level, for me, and I know I've said this before, I just don't know if I've said it on the video, but I'm gonna say it again, is that the reason why I love comics is because I believe in human potential, and I believe that we're so much more capable than we think we are. True story. I read an article one time. Now, this article was written by The Onion. If you guys remember theonion.com, it's satire. Like, I don't know, some of the articles, like marijuana involved in every level of pizza distribution. Like it shows the guy in the kitchen making the pizza, and he looks stoned, and then the guy coming to the door looks stoned, to deliver it. Then the guy paying looks like he's stoned. It's just goofy stuff, right? But the one that they did, which was kind of like a wah 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 type story, was about a 107-year-old man who is the best violinist in the world, and how this violinist who lived in Italy or something like that, he died and whatever. But then you go on through the article, it's basically going through his life and talking, and it's not really saying much about what you'd expect, it talking about a musician. And then it gets to a point where it goes, Well, he never picked up the violin, but he was the best in the world. He never knew it. And boy, I tell you what, that article, instead of, or, that stupid little story that somebody wrote, man, it messed me up. It made me think, what do I know how to do that I've never tried to do? And I think that's my question for you for this video, for the day, is like, what are you good at that you don't know that you're good at? What's out there? What's out there for you? And it fills my mind with wonder. Like, maybe, am I a polyglot? I've never messed with languages, I know enough of Spanish to get by, in a restaurant. Ask where the bathroom is, stuff like that. But, mi español es malo. But, what is it that you want to do? You've always wanted to do, but you've always been too afraid to try. That's what I want you to think about. Because maybe, just maybe, just to get spiritual, maybe God wants to bless you somehow in your life. And I've never oil painted because it's kind of expensive, and but is it any more expensive than what I do? I just spend my money in a different direction. Maybe I'm a lot better at that than I would imagine. Anyway, there's something out there that you haven't done. I believe this. If this ended up in your feed, I want you to consider that, your higher power, God, and Jesus, maybe he's trying to get a hold of you, get a hold of your attention. If you're spending any time with me, that means that maybe you've got some kind of creative soul. You've got an aspect, you've got something in your heart that needs to be done. You need to explore. Maybe you're a good dancer. You don't even know. Don't waste your time on the earth. Don't waste your time. Find out what that is and go for it. Go try it. And if you fail, well, okay. Well, but at least you tried. You can scratch that one off your list and move on to something else. Where I'm not much of a gambler or a card player. That might be kind of a negative example, but who knows? I might be really good at poker or bridge or something like that. The thought of playing cards actually just fills me with a lot of, God, what a waste of time. Or fishing. Again, I'm not a fisherman, but maybe I'm pretty good at it. I wouldn't know. I'm not much of an outdoorsman. I have a shirt that says indoorsman, actually. So, just to brag a little bit on my lack of wilderness acumen. And that's why I'm so fascinated with wilderness videos. Guys that go out there with a hatchet and they build themselves a whole little house in 30 days. Just out of wood and mud and stuff, rocks. That's fascinating to me. Guys who cook out in the wilderness, that's just, wow, super cool. Now, I avoid the wilderness guys because my allergies would just basically kill me. That's just not I don't want to die. But there's something you haven't done. Let's not talk about me at all. Let's talk about you. What is it that you haven't done that you need to do? I'm going to leave you with that, okay? And next time, when we get together next time, we're going to ink Judge Dredd, okay? Thanks for hanging in there with me. And I am the law. And give it a last little look. Boom. I hope he turns out as good as this one. I'm sure he will. All right. Catch you later. Have a good night. God bless.